Take it away, Kevin.
Hi, Nina. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It's great to be back for another AIM webinar. This time, as you say, with our friends from Shiny Docs, talking about driving profit through data efficiency. And it's an important topic because, look, it's not about the future. It's about today. And today, the paradigm of information management is changing. We see it here in our research at AIM. The paradigm of information management is becoming broader. It's moving to include perspectives, not just only of risk and compliance and data security, but also to include things about how we can use information and data to drive the performance of the organization, improving things that really matter, things like customer experience and market share and ultimately profit. So it's an important transition that is underway now, one that we really all must take note of because expectations are changing. The expectations of what we do as information management professionals are changing. The expectations of what the technology can and should do to really make a difference and move the needle are changing. But as we have found in our research, it means the tricky task of aligning information management strategy and acumen with business strategy. Often there's a gap there. And often the struggle isn't really with the technology per se, but it is this gap or aligning these goals and perspectives. And why should we care about all this as practitioners? It's because only then will we really secure the budget and the executive support and the buy-in that we need to deliver success and really be innovative. So it's all about it's about aligning these strategies and approaches, remaining vigilant about security and data compliance and those things for sure, but also encompassing process improvements that drive profit through data management and efficiency. As I mentioned, AIM recently released its 2022 State of the Intelligent Information Management Report, which presented this bold goal for the industry. And we'll be talking a bit about that report today, at least as a framework for this discussion, and how those of us in information management can avoid sort of being dismissed as an executive afterthought by focusing on these aspects of performance and profit and working to become key business enablers of those objectives. So that's what I'd like to explore in this session with our guest, Jason Cassidy. Jason, are you with us? Hello,
Yeah.
hello, Jason.
So
Welcome
good to talk
aboard.
again, Kevin. Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you, and I love the fact that I know I'm going to get to see you in person again shortly. A lot of these restrictions have been lifted.
Well, let us all welcome Jason. Jason is the CEO and founder of Shiny Docs, and he has been solving digital enterprise technology challenges for over 20 years as a new product developer and an entrepreneur. Jason's award-winning solutions are transforming the digital landscape from traditional ECM to a more modern approach. Jason, of course, sits on the board of directors for AIM and is an expert in process improvement. And Jason, I'd like to start by summarizing the 4 major findings of the recent AIM Industry Watch report as a framework for our discussion today. There are 4 of them, and just quickly, number 1, most users tell us that they struggle to get the support and funding and buy-in that they need for their plans for digital transformation, information management, information governance. Finding 2 is that primarily the focus has traditionally been in our industry on those things like risk, data compliance, data security. But finding number 3 tells us that that is changing. And indeed, 2022 uncovered that leveraging information for customer experience, also internal customer experience, has now become a primary goal. We didn't see that in the past. That is new this year. And finding 4 is that information access, automation, analysis are seen as the most effective tools to bring about these sorts of innovations and strategies. Jason, from your point of view, what are the opportunities today to really, I like to say, move the needle in terms of organizational performance?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And I truly, like being on the board, I've had the opportunity to hear Peggy give the findings, and I literally have a hard copy of the book that was passed out in Denver. And I agree with each of the findings. And the part that makes me a little sad, and the part that makes me simultaneously excited as a board member, is that we get to solve these problems. And the part that's really difficult with that is that it's going to be people asking themselves, what is my personal brand and what is my identity within an organization, that's going to be challenged. When you first started talking, you alluded to, and I'd love if people were to write down these following things, like, I work at an organization. What is my product or service? Like, truly write it down and say, this is the things that we deliver that people give us credit for or money for, or whatever credit is within your organization. It's different between governments or between private sector, obviously, but really, what are we being compensated for and what are we delivering? So think about that. Truly think about the customer experience that you deliver with that, and think about the staff experience that you have to best support that. Now, if you write those things down and you truly wear that idea that this is what my organization does, then this is where the identity crisis happens for the information practitioner, is that you have to be able to write down the one or two or three or four or infinite number of things that you are doing continuously, directly, that is perceived by the C-level, that is directly perceived by the board or the CFO, that is having a positive impact on those, making the service that you provide less expensive to provide, more efficient, a more wonderful customer experience. And if you can't say that, holding your hand on your heart, then there needs to be a change. And it might cause that identity crisis for people, because you could be doing a fabulous job doing the risk mitigation. However, the money is going to be vectored to that front of the business always. So you will always be playing catch up if you just focus on something that is not directly aligned to those key areas: the product, the service, the customer experience, the staff experience.
Well, Jason, I know when I talk with practitioners in the field, if you will, I often hear that the struggle is the feeling of lacking a seat at the table, really having a voice. And now that the focus seems to be shifting away somewhat from a singular risk perspective to one that encompasses performance and customer experience, do you feel that information management practitioners will be more successful in getting the funding and the support they need if indeed they link their strategies to these corporate KPIs versus only focusing on the risk and compliance side of what we do?
Certainly. Nina, if you could pop up slide number 10, and then slide number 10 for us is the fragmented strategies slide, and we'll use that as a backdrop. Whenever, as a for-profit business, when I think of who would we best want to go after, you want to go after the companies who are spending money, which makes sense. You're going to make more money if you go after a market that has more spending than with less spending. And the old joke is you always want to go after the market where all the arenas and football patches and all these, if they're named after those things, that's the market that you want to go after, because those are the people who clearly have the most money. And inside of your organization, you can do this same calculation: is where is this money being spent? You have access to this. How much money is being poured into government regulations, compliance, and regulatory rules? Traditionally, it is a smaller amount than what is going into automation, operational efficiency, into providing your service, into providing your product in the best way, and distributing your product in the most efficient way. So rather than trying to scream at the top of your lungs and say, I'm important, you are important unambiguously, and you might even keep your bosses out of jail. However, unless you are explicitly doing that at the moment, then they probably aren't paying attention to you. So there's some tricks that you can do. The strategy, you already have the right Microsoft software, you already have the right open text software, you already have the right people in place. Is there's a bit of a change in our talk track that needs to happen. For example, if we're thinking about our perfect functional activity taxonomy with the right retention schedule, with the right legal citations, all that is great. However, when you present it to the business, what you have to do is use the business language. I'll give just an easy example of the metadata and the connections that you have between the data should all be in the business language. If the business calls this thing a work order, then don't call it an ABC 123 with a particular retention schedule. It seems pretty basic. However, if you're not normalizing, at least with the conversational tone that the business uses for the business, then you are literally isolating yourself, and in this case, down in the bottom right-hand side of this particular slide. So what we're suggesting, and why we paint a little Shiny Docs logo in the middle of this, is use your intelligence, use your systems, which includes systems that span across these, a data bus that expands across these organizational components, and even within the micro areas of your business, like inside of the SharePoint sites or team sites, make sure that you're always aligning with the business components, the thing that directly aligns with the service, the product, the customer experience, or the staff experience, so that the C levels are speaking your language. When they come to you and say, well, what's our service desk performance? And you are providing the data that answers that question, then you win. Now you're aligned with the right funding. But if you say, I don't know, but I mean, all of our work orders are properly retained in the records management system, they'll go, okay.
Who cares?
So that's the reality, is that you can move yourself into that automation and operational efficiency zone. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And it comes with your personal brand. It's making sure that your brand is aligned with the business.
And that may take some effort on your part, our part. In other words, I may not know what those key performance indicators are of my organization intrinsically. I'm not at the C level. I'm not looking at it from that point of view. It might take some effort for me to understand what those measures are and how what I do really does relate to those things. So it may take some effort as a change agent on my part to become educated and then be able to translate what I do into that language that will resonate in those ways. Now, another big barrier that we hear about is simply the volume and variety of information that we must manage every day. It's staggering, and it often outstrips our ability to keep up, much less leverage all of that information as an asset. And you say that instead of trying to impose our will on data, we should instead embrace the messiness. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's in, Nina, if you could just pull up slide 7, the exponential data, we'll use that as a backdrop, is the reality that we encounter with the medium-sized organization and the large organization, and to some extent the smaller organizations that we deal with, is they have this curve. In this case, it happens to be a very large manufacturing company with over a petabyte of data, as visualized by our Shiny Docs tools. They lost the ability to put it into one system way back in 2007, when they only had a little bit more than 100 terabytes of information. Now they have petabytes across 900 business units, across file shares. And at no point when they go to litigation, this is a manufacturing company, they're always in litigation, they're always in legal challenges, they're worldwide. And when they go, the judge or the magistrate never asks, did you put it in your records management system? Did you manage this data in SharePoint? What they ask is, did you dispose of it with according to policy? Because the opposing counsel says that you should have it. Did you dispose it according to policy or not? And that's all you need to prove. You don't have to, but unfortunately, our brains go down to this functional fixedness of, okay, well, records management means putting it in this system over here, and then it means putting on the you forget that all it is just, do I have the ISO 15489 compliant metadata? Do I have the defensibility associated with knowing where it is in the lineage? If you do, check, check, check. Obviously, there's 10 other things or 100 other things. But what I'm suggesting is, if your idea is to put it all into one bucket and then you'll get the outcome, that ship has sailed a long time ago. This graph demonstrates that that's gone. It's just gone. If that is your idea, then unfortunately, you can do it for, let's say, the first 100 terabytes or 200 terabytes and put a lot of effort into that migration, and it'll probably work fine for that crown jewels or important data. But what about the other 800 terabytes? Do we just pretend that it's not important, or do we do something else? And this is why it kind of begs the next question that you're going to ask about automation.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
Well, automation seems to be the answer. I mean, according to our research, in fact, finding number 4 was that information access, automation, and analysis seem to be the most effective tools. After all, we can't expect people to keep up when business and data are moving at machine speeds. But folks often struggle to make the real world connection between automation, data management, and really moving the needle in terms of organizational performance and improvement and user experience, these kinds of things. What's one way that we can do that?
So I love the transition there, and that it's the idea that it does beg the question. Clearly, there's too much data, and there's too much variety to say that we're just going to do it with one thing. And the first place that we need to start talking about is, and have this hard conversation, is, what is your information strategy for automation? Not the tools, not the teams, not the ability to have humans do the work or the automation. Is what is the strategy? Because when we go into companies, like, they'll brag about, well, I have scripts for migration, or I have the ability to move to the cloud. All that's doing is moving your problem from the basement to the attic. What we really want to talk about is, how does the information get to the right people at the right time? How do we ensure that you are demonstrating the compliance? And that these are different questions than, is it in Microsoft or is it in OpenText? Like, Microsoft is good software. It works great. However, the burden is on you to make sure it executes across your organization. Same thing with OpenText and others. You don't automatically get the outcome by buying software and implementing the software properly. And the metaphor that I've used before, and I think we've used it in past conversation, Kevin, is, if we were to design regional and international transportation today, it would probably look different than the planes, trains, automobiles, submarines, everything that we've got out there, because we would design it. We would make something efficient. Everything would run like a Swiss train, because we could design it and think about it. But when we approach our information management problems, it's no different than that big regional and international transportation problem. You can't just say, I'm going to fix it all with one train station that has one set of rules and one in and out, input and output. That's not how data flows. Data flows in and out of these systems. It's loosely connected to structured systems. Like your Maximo assets will have documents out on the file shares. And what we need to talk about is creating the connections between that information in a meaningful way, in a continuous way, using automation. That is a foundational component of the strategy, and it's something new that people have to wrap their brains around. It's the idea that I can't actually ask a question of my data until the data is listening, until it's connected, until it's in a format by which I can ask questions. So automation is the answer, but what we need to talk about is the strategy associated with the automation, the strategy as a service, the information strategy as a service that's going to help you, because no amount of software without the strategy is going to help.
We are here with Jason Cassidy, Jason is the founder and CEO of Shiny Docs, and we're here talking about driving profit through data management and efficiency. And if you have any questions for Jason, please feel free to bring them up in the Q&A feature of the interface today. We'll be getting to questions here in just a few minutes, so please let's take advantage of having Jason with us today, an expert in process improvement and data management. But Jason, I want to ask you or get to what I think is the primary finding in the 2022 report from AIIM, and that is this whole idea of customer experience becoming a primary concern in information management, information governance today. Certainly, I think it's reflected all over our society and our businesses today. Maintaining a competitive advantage really is all about the customer experience today. Customers, you and I, and employees are no longer really willing to overlook sort of old school, friction-filled experiences. Organizations that don't remove the friction risk being left behind by their more agile competitors. What technologies and approaches do you feel are most powerful today in doing that? And what are the must-haves in my strategy?
So the first piece, like going back to that thing I'm asking people to write down, what is my product? What is my service? What's my customer experience? What is my staff experience? If you look at those things, then the next question that you have to ask is, how am I designing my program to complement the way people work there? And you notice that I didn't say to force them to do the thing that I need them to do. We've already proven that doesn't work. And I know for sure it doesn't work across 900 business units and giant companies. And it probably doesn't work in your doctor's office or four-person company either. It's this whole idea of fiat telling you that you have to do something is not a thing. The only way to get people to do something is to design a program that complements the way that they already work. And in most cases, the ship has sailed in that. There's a few places where people will just happily do stuff, like team sites, for example. People are spinning up team sites all over the place, having meetings, dropping documents into team sites. So whether or not that was purposeful or not, but we can say, hey, if we can capture that information from team sites, okay, that's a pretty good design because people are willing to do it and I can get the information out of it that I need. So let's assume we either have good designs that people are willing to use, and you can test for that and measure it. It's easy. Are people using it naturally or not? If they're not doing it, am I willing to design something else that's going to complement them? In the absence of that, in the absence of actually doing that design, what do you get? You get the behaviors that just happen. People will do whatever they feel comfortable. They've designed their own behaviors, kind of like everybody's seen that sidewalk goes this way to right angle to there, and then you see the beaten path that goes in between. The path is where people go. The sidewalk was the design, and obviously the design didn't work. You should have put a path between. It's where people naturally go. We've all seen that graphic. So I have 2 points in this, and I know I belabor it, but the idea is if you can design, do the design. If you are not in a position where you can influence people and give them a design that is complementary to them, which most of us aren't, what's left? You get a variety of applications, content types, workflows across a variety of sources. What do? You just forensically, after the fact, use great tools to go and find that information. So don't ask what bucket am I going to put it in or how am I going to get the C-level to force people to do it. That's gone. It's just gone. What you have to do is say, what can I do after the fact to find that information? Can I crawl the file shares? And can I get every word on every page? And can I classify that document where it is? Can I find the duplicates across that in SharePoint and other places? Can I visualize what that data is? Can I make it available as part of a nice search? Because we've all proven to ourselves we love Google search. I don't go directly to a website. I don't even go to Best Buy to buy something. I search on Google for something at Best Buy and it gives me the first result and then I might buy it there. So that's how the design should work. And in the absence of that, all you're left with is the ability to reactively go find this at this huge machine scale, which is a different set of tools than what we've been thinking about or what we were taught to build when we got our library sciences degree. If it was in the 50s, it was the Dewey Decimal System. If it was in the 70s, it might have been Dublin Core. And it's obviously modern for certified information professionals. We have wonderful taxonomies and all this type of thing. However, you have to layer that on the content wherever it is. The idea of I'm going to get it, I'm going to get everybody to do my thing, design for them, and you can. If you can't design for them, then you need to do that. What I call forensically, it's forensic implies some type of crime. I don't like using it, but reactively, I have to go out and find it.
Now, can you give us an example of one organization or one use case that you feel has been particularly successful using these approaches? What did they do? What were the results, and how can we do it too?
We have a number of organizations, and Nina, if you could put up slide number 8 with Bruce Power. We love talking about Bruce Power mostly because a lot of the organizations that we deal with don't want to let off the fact that maybe their information might be disorganized. However, Bruce Power won some awards for this, so they were more than happy to talk about it. And what we found with their program, they had about 20 years using IBM and OpenText and other things, and they did a really good job of what I referred to earlier as those crown jewels, these really super important maintenance records and these types of things, which is about maybe 1% of their data. And the other 99% was out there. They could find it, but sometimes it might take 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 20 hours. It might take another truck roll to go out to the site to measure something and send that information back to a engineer so they can move something along in their workflow in procurement. So obviously we can find lots of efficiencies in there by doing, in this case, a big pre-calculation. So what we've done with them is they have Bruce Discovery. It is a interface that looks like Google, that has connected all of their asset management to associated documents, associated best practices. So when they have an asset that they want to research as an engineer or as a technician, you type in the asset ID, they get a search result just like that Google interface where it just puts everything in context. Here's the result from the asset management system. Here's some results of design documents, as built, work order history, these types of things. So you do your research in one spot. And the value is not the search interface. Search interfaces, there's tons of companies that have been doing search for 20 or 30 years. That's not the value. The value is in the fact that we pre-calculated literally billions of data points. So you get that Best Buys type of shopping experience so I don't have to think about where I'm going. I don't have to know where I'm going. Is it in SharePoint or is it on the file share? Is it an email? It's all pre-calculated. And I just say, it's this asset, give me the data, and it gives it to you all in context. And of course, when you click on it, it might go into Maximo, or you click on it, it might go into OpenText, or you click on it, it might go to the file share. Don't care. And that's how users think. It's like, I don't care. Just give me the data that I need. Yes, thank you for the data. So I love the feedback that we get from their director of innovation, and he's done talks, and I hope everybody goes and watches it 30 times. But the coolest feedback that I get is just from a couple of technicians that I've talked to. They're like, yeah, I use it on my phone, and I search and I find the stuff that I need faster than going to the file share. That's awesome. That's the wonderful feedback that I like of doing this pre-calculation. And it is completely, like we say, forensic. It is completely after the fact, and we never forced anybody to do anything.
And what were some of the results in terms of, did they increase profit using this approach? How did they save money? What were some of the metrics, the key process indicators that were the needle was moved by?
Well, this is always kind of the funny thing, is like, nobody wants to fire anybody. Nobody wants to reduce headcount or whatever. But what is the benefit of taking a search that might have taken up to 45 or 40 hours and reducing that down to 45 seconds? Like, an engineer, instead of spending 10% of their time doing engineering and the other 90% of their time collaborating, sending people out for truck rolls, validating information, maybe they can spend 20% of their time engineering, 30%, 40%, 50%. There is an obvious payback to that is very calculable. But at the same time, nobody's getting rid of anybody. Everybody's just working on higher value problems. So they are going to see a higher return for every vibrating electron that leaves that plant. They're going to see more and more money based upon that efficiency. But in the meantime, there's this kind of secondary thing that we like to brag about, is that they're continuously deleting files now that they don't need anymore. Redundant, obsolete, trivial stuff that every day these automations run. And if it matches a rule of something that is no longer needed or something that's clearly redundant or trivial, it can just delete them on the spot. And they're saving up to $250,000 per year just in disk backup in power savings. So, I mean, that's secondary to the efficiency gains, but at least you have something to hand the CFO and say, here's an automatic savings that we just get, boom. But the CEO, the board, everybody knows, okay, it's the fact that now we have data integrity. Now we're driving our business with data as fuel instead of exhaust. That's why they're doing it.
All right, so Bruce Power is saving money by being more efficient, using their people more efficiently, spending less time. They're reducing redundant and obsolete and trivial information that's saving them money. Is there an example of how we might drive profit through this ability, actually reaching new markets and increasing our profit?
Yeah, this is where the funny thing is, as far as it being a data practitioner, that I struggle with, is that when the business comes to us, all I can do is answer your question about what do you need from the data. Like, for example, we were asked to bid on a government project that was prediction on wildfires and how wildfires are going to spread. And I don't know anything about the engineering or science of wildfire spreading, but I can get every piece of data that you need as the engineer to do that data. And I think this is where some businesses struggle, is they'll go to the information professional and they say, make me more money and be with your data. And that is it's a funny business problem. So indeed, there are obvious examples where you have, instead of 32 people running a records management as a service project, and this is a real life example that we had, where a consulting organization had 30 people manually doing this, and they were replaced by 2 people operating a tool. So imagine the expense of 1 piece of software plus 2 individuals who didn't have to work 24/7 versus 32 people who are manually going through the data. We have those stories, and obviously automating that, and hopefully those 30 people went off to find higher value problems. So those things absolutely happen, and it's the type of efficiency that we need in our business. None of us want to be manually dragging and dropping files for a living. We would love to be achieving business outcomes. So those things are truly happening using this data automation.
All right, we are here with Jason Cassidy from Shiny Docs. Now is the time. If you have questions for Jason, how does this all work? How can I use it? What are some of the barriers that you are experiencing? How can we overcome those barriers? Now would be the time to bring up your questions for Jason, as we will be getting to Q&A section here in just a moment. But Jason, one last question. All right, we've talked about some really great advice and perspectives and technologies today. How does Shiny Docs help with all of this? What are some resources or action items that you can suggest to our audience who are ready to take action?
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, Nina, if you could put up the slide 11, that's the Shiny Docs spotlight. So people don't know to ask this question. Generally, when they come to us, they'll say, well, I failed at my migration, or 100% of my budget went into the migration. Now I don't have any money left to do the business outcome that we're trying to drive with this M365 or whatever it is. So they didn't know to really ask. I needed to understand my data better before I started. I needed to get rid of the stuff that was a bit of a boat anchor, like the redundant, obsolete, and trivial, before I did the migration. So sometimes they don't find software like ours. They don't find strategy like ours. And what I'm going to suggest to you is, this is how it works. When you engage with us, come with your specific problem. I can't find these documents well enough. I'm trying to migrate to the cloud and we have 100 terabytes and I feel like half of it is junk. These are great questions to ask, because then we will reply not just with software. Here's software, go figure it out. We will reply with software and strategy that will show you in the first day, this is how much information you have across all of these systems. In the first week, it'll show you all the redundant, obsolete, and trivial information. And then depending on your data size, in the first month or 2 or 3, it'll implement your records rules to find, here's where the actual crown jewels are within your organization. Here's using them. Here's who's redundant. Here's who has the obsolete version of them. Here's some risk associated with the data. And you just keep building up this inventory of knowledge. And then it comes back to the question that you just asked is, okay, so what? Well, so what is, okay, can your frontline customer service staff answer questions faster if they have faster access to this? If you're doing freedom of information searches, instead of taking 2 days to do the search across file shares and emails and 100 other things, wouldn't you love to fulfill those in 45 seconds? Complete permission search across the organization. If you're going to do a migration to the cloud, wouldn't it be easier to move 30 terabytes instead of 300 if you find out that only 30 are active pieces of content that require a lot of value? These are the types of things that, unfortunately, we can't write every possible outcome or idea. I can't write down saying we're going to solve wildfire problems, but I know for sure that we can help with that data. So we've introduced this idea of a Shiny Doc Spotlight, and as a standardized engagement, which just shows your data across huge, no matter how much, small, like 1 terabyte of information or a petabyte of information, will show you how much data that you have, where it is, allow you to ask these amazing questions of it. And then you'll see how to build out a rolling data program to achieve your outcomes associated with the data. And we will give you both the strategy, the idea of how to align your regional international transportation, in addition to the software, which will actually do the work so humans don't have to.
Very good. All right. Well, that is Jason Cassidy. Jason, thank you so much for your comments today. I'd like to open it up to our audience now for any questions that you might have for Jason. We will take a few minutes here to do a bit of Q&A. So please feel free to bring them up and we'll bring them into our conversation. But Jason, as you were talking, it occurs to me, where do I start? And I think you were getting to the heart of the matter. I think I need to understand what I have to work with. Often we have so much information in so many different places that it can be difficult to know where the value really lies. And I think an important question to a C-level discussion is, what information do you have available in the organization and how can it drive profit for the organization? And you can only answer those questions if you first know what information you do have. And that can be difficult to do. Can you tell us a little bit about that baseline inventory and how that works and how Shiny Docs can help automate that process?
Yes, certainly. And like the genesis of a lot of these projects start off with some event. You need to support a litigation, or you need to get off of aging hardware, or somebody found personal information on a bunch of staff, so you need to get rid of it, or you had a crypto locker, like cybersecurity threat. So from the CIO down, generally they're like, okay, we need to fix this. Give me ideas to fix it. And at some point, it trickles down to the information professional. It's like, okay, well, we got to move to something. It's here, it's dangerous, we got to move it to somewhere else. So as part of that engagement, the first thing that we do when we get engaged with, okay, there's a CIO perhaps in crisis or really needing to do something, and it gets trickled down, they think they've figured out what they need to do. The first piece that we do is show in the information wherever it is right now in a way that's easy to ask questions of the data. We create the connections, the visualizations, it's real-time visualization of the content so that you can ask literally any question. File types, file content, show me every document that has a person's name in it, credit card numbers, show me everyone that has Kevin Crane in it that's also a doc that also has Nina mentioned. These are trivial things that you can now do with that. Now, based upon that, it's easy now to automate deletion of content. It's built into the platform. You can just say everything that's trivial like this, we'll just dispose of right now. You do an attestation, boom, it was done really well. And then you can say, okay, we can mark everything that is transient for disposal, let's say in 6 years. So you mark it for disposal in place. And then, okay, the crown jewels, these records that we absolutely need, I need them to go into SharePoint with the following custom columns populated. Well, the software just does that as well. You do a query that says, okay, show me everything associated with Kevin Crane Corporation, and it puts it into the Kevin Crane Corporation folder, and with the records management attributes associated with it. So it's so much easier to automate the answering of questions when you know what you have. And unfortunately, most CIOs and data professionals, they kind of pick it up in the middle. They start their migration and realize, oh, well, we need to write some scripts in order to identify this kind of content. And they end up doing one-offs for every little piece rather than a bigger purview of what they have, and then making a bigger decisions about the strategy associated with where things should be. And that's what we deliver. We deliver both the software and we guide you with the strategy. And in some cases, the software itself actually guides the strategy as well.
I'm thinking, how can I use this technology to understand my data? It's what if I ask this question? You mentioned this way, Jason, asking questions about the data, and oftentimes we will ask, what is the risky data? What needs to what do we need to get rid of? What poses us costs that we don't need? How can we drive our costs down, increase our efficiencies? And those are all really great questions. What if we added a question to the question set for us? And that is, what is the opportunity in this data? How can I, now that I know what I have, and I've done all these other sort of risk mitigation, cost mitigation efforts, or I'm working on those, the other more broad question that serves where we started is linking the strategy of information management and corporate strategy, or profit strategy, if you will. The next question I should be asking in conjunction with my C-suite colleagues is, what does this information represent in terms of an opportunity to gain market share, to be more profitable, actually make revenue from this information? And that, I believe, is the power that we are now faced with. And do you feel that we're ready for that in our industry, or do you feel that we'll be stuck in our sort of mindset of only looking at risk and savings?
Well, it's, in a sense, I'm a bit of a futurist. So I'll say by 2040, we will have all trained ourselves away from kind of the box mentality of we're going to put our files there into the active mentality of how do our files drive business. So it's some examples of this is, for every purchase order in your organization, for every work order, for every customer delivery, for every truck that gets built, or for every widget that goes off of the line, there is associated information that supported that activity. Is that already linked within your organization? So for every purchase order, do you have the vendor drawing? Do you have the design document, the as-built? Do you have the implementation information? Do you have the entire collaboration history that happened in email all ready to go when somebody says, I need that to support the litigation. I need that so I can renegotiate the contract next time. If not, why don't you? Well, you don't because you're stuck thinking about the retention schedules. You might be stuck thinking about, okay, the law says I got to, like it's, but if you attach that content to the active parts of the business that are making you profit, generating the credits for it, if you like I say, it doesn't have to be profit, but it's just however you get credited in your business, then automatically you are now interesting to the business because now you can answer some questions. So for example, every purchase order, every sale is invoice, these types of things, you might be able to say, well, do we have a contract for every one of them? Do we know the renewal terms for every customer? And can I relay that back to sales staff? Can I relay that to be predictive as far as, okay, what is our maintenance revenue going to look like 3 years from now? All of that's buried out in contracts somewhere. and you own it. You can come to the business and say, look at everything I know about the business. I can see a decline that's going to happen 3 years from now, because that's when every one of these customers' contracts terminate. And unless you have 100% coverage of that in your ERP system, you don't know.
Yeah.
So now you can take that and know, but it is one of those things where you have to be proactive. You have to open yourself up to think, my job is to support the business. My job is to ensure the business is most effective at what the business does, rather than saying, I am going to do the thing that I'm good at. Because businesses don't, like when you hire somebody, you don't, Kevin, tell me everything that you've done before in the past is sort of your value. But your value is, Kevin, what are we going to do together in the future? What are we doing right now? And what are we going to do together in the future? And if you can tell a great story to your business, this is where I'm going to take you. I'm going to give you enough information that you're going to be predictive about your business. You're going to see where the risk is in the future, and you're going to see where you're going to be profitable in the future. That's pretty interesting, but you have to take that initiative. And you can only do that initiative steeped in the data. So that's kind of my big pitch, is that if you're ignorant of the data, then you're stuck. So steep yourself in the data, then you can present that to the business and be truly mega valuable.
That is Jason Cassidy. We've been talking about driving profit through data management efficiency. You can find Jason and find out more at shinydocs.com. Jason, thank you so much for being a part of our event today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Kevin. It's always fun talking to you.
All right. Well, with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Nina now. And Nina, tell us a little bit more about the virtual summit coming up.
Yes, Kevin, the virtual summit is around the corner. If you love virtual events, you'll love what we have in store for you. It's designed around your work schedule. The 2022 AIM Virtual Summit offers 2.5 days packed with expert-led sessions to take you beyond the mechanics of information management and into a new dimension of leadership. So you can register today at aim.org/summit. So as we bring the webinar to a close, just the last few minute reminders. This webinar was recorded, so you can catch anything you want to hear again in a recap email that'll be sent within 24 hours. And a link to the resources for this webinar, as well as the presentation from Shiny Docs, will be listed in the resource page as well. Also, don't forget to take our feedback survey and let us know how we did. There'll be a pop-up message at the end of the webinar. So as we do bring this to a close, I would like to say a big thank you to our underwriters, Shiny Docs. Without them, we wouldn't be able to bring you free educational programs. So big shout out to Shiny Docs and our solution providers. Before we close out though, I would like to ask Jason if he has any last minute takeaways for our audience.
Oop, Jason, looks like you're muted, Jason.
Sorry, I said my best stuff while I was muted. So I truly appreciate everybody's participation today. And I do come here in dual roles. We're excited about getting more people participating in AIM. So we are, as the board, we're quite excited about not, obviously, I want to sell some software, but really excited about providing more and more value to information professionals, to the membership and prospective members. And you're going to see a lot of expansion in the types of information that gets available to you in the programs, and certainly the key learnings as far as AIM Plus and other things. So interacting with people here, please reach out to me, connect on LinkedIn. I'm Jason Cassidy on there from Shiny Docs. I'm the only one. And I'm just as happy to talk about what AIM is doing, in addition to hopefully maybe our software is interesting. So thanks so much for giving me a final word here, Nina and Kevin. It's great.
Thank you. And Kevin, what about you? Any closing remarks you have?
Well, it's been great as always to talk with Jason. Jason's one of our thought leaders in the industry. And so it's always great to spend some time with Jason and explore some topics that we don't always talk about. And as I mentioned earlier, The paradigm of information management, information governance is changing, it's evolving, it's moving away from just simply a risk, compliance, security mindset to one that's really in a business enabler. I think the tools that we have at our disposal can really move the needle in terms of organizational performance. Those are the expectations that will be put on us in the coming years as information management continues to grow. So these kinds of discussions are super important, and I look forward to having more along the lines of this as we move forward. And it's a great pleasure again to have Jason with us.
Excellent. So thank you everyone for joining us today. This is Nina from AIIM saying, see you next time.